Good morning, everybody, and happy summer. Today is the July 9, 2026 edition of the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Advisory Council meeting. So welcome to all of you that are here either in person or remotely. I think just go around the room with a quick introduction. So Judge Dillard, we'll let you start.
Judge Dillard, Concho County, representing counties under 100,000. Good morning, Scott Pasternak with Burns McDonnell, representing the general public.
Jeff Mayfield with North Texas Municipal Water District represents a public solid waste district or authority.
Chuck River Waste Management. I represent a professional with experience operating a solid waste facility.
Charlie Fritz, Deputy Director of Waste Permits.
Megan Henson, Section Manager for Municipal Solid Waste Permits.
Anaerobic, Technical Specialist for Municipal Solid Waste Permits. And I will go ahead and call roll for anybody online. Richard Bromwitz.
Here, representing the public, general public.
Robin Alaniz.
Here, I'm representing cities under 25,000.
Seth Cunningham. Brock Lively.
I'm here representing municipal and county solid waste stuff.
Thomas Parker.
Here, representing scrap tire management for Liberty Tire and All American Tire.
Frank Pugsley.
Hey, good morning. Frank Pugsley, a professional engineer from a private engineering firm with experience in design and management of solid waste facilities.
Dr. Vett.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Sorry about that. Scott Trevis. Lisa Weinberger.
Hi, I'm Risa Weinberger, and I'm representing the composting industry and environmental educators.
Just out of curiosity for the person representing for Thomas Parker, what is your name so I can have it for the record?
Oh, Jody Parker.
Jody Parker? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. So for our first agenda item, we've got Charlie Fritz with the Waste Permits Division update.
Okay, so a couple agency-wide updates. If you are on the Gov delivery, MSW Gov delivery, you saw a reach out recently, I want to say about 2 weeks ago, about TRIO and comments, public comments on a whole long list of agency-wide rules. So TRIO is the Texas Regulatory Efficiency Office. We and them, so both of us went through all of our rules, air, water, waste, everybody, and kind of just looked for obsolete rules, redundant rules, inefficient rules, anything outdated. And so in that email, and can you share it up on the screen, the PDF version, a long list of agency-wide rules and several MSW chapter rules did end up on that list of, and what we're looking for is input, comments. So if you want to scroll down to, I think, the chapter 335 stuff. So it's a ways down there. It's in order. But it's like we were looking for rules that copied state statute explicitly. We need those rules. Or did we have rules that just reference federal rules or other state rules that aren't really needed because just kind of wanted to get on from stakeholders on are these rules still needed or are there changes? Do you agree with revisions? We won't say that if just because the rules are on that list, will it be removed, modified, deleted, changed? But just looking for input on those rules. So we will say, yeah, okay, they're up there now. So it's a long list, but when you get down to 330, it's actually focusing on chapter 330, section 63. So 330.63, which is part 3 of the application. So there's actually some good rules about that would benefit from stakeholder input on just can we improve these rules? So that's really what it's looking at. So we'll send out the link to y'all, and we'll send out the link, and we'll send out the comment link to that as well. So take a look. Comment ends July 16th. So it's a week and a half from now. Okay.
I have just a general quick question about that. So I wasn't even familiar with Trio, so I had to do a little search and see that was stood up, I think, in May.
Yes.
Something like that. So it's real recent. And it's using, among other things, like AI to review rules for just exactly what you were saying. So like for the exercise was AI used first, and then it came up with this is where, and then the staff goes through and says, yeah, it makes sense. Or is that kind of how that works, or were there some things that staff had already identified, or I'm just curious about the process.
I believe it was 2-part. I do not know what exactly the steps the Trio office used, but it was kind of a combined effort, parallel effort.
Right.
That we were tasked with looking at our rules to find duplicate sections where we copied state statute explicitly. So looking for those aspects. So we did that part during January, and then Trio did their part as well. And so that's kind of where we ended up with this combined list.
Okay.
So they looked at ours, cut some back. They added some of what they found. We cut that back. And then what you see here is kind of the end result of our 2 reviews.
Okay. So like that right column would have been like that first one that was flagged by Trio, but if there's further down one that says TCQ, that was flagged by staff.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
What was the due date for comments again?
July 16th is the deadline. And we'll send the link out as part of this in chat. And Anna can send it out too as the wrap-up email.
I'm sorry, I'm just done. What does Trio, what's the abbreviation? What does Trio stand for?
Texas Regulatory Efficiency Office, part of the governor's office.
Yep.
Scott, did you have a question?
That got me.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so yeah, comments July 16th. We'll send out links. Next up, ledge update. It's interim hearing time, so ledge is still kind of happening, not as hardcore as when it's actually in session, but I wanted to let you all know there is a Senate Natural Resource interim hearing on September 21st. Is that a Monday? September 20th or 21st, whichever one's the Monday, where they will be talking about one of the interim charges is the ensuring responsible renewable energy decommissioning. And while it's really focused on renewable energy sites, decommissioning those sites, TCQ and of interest to y'all get added in because it talks about ensuring responsible recycling and disposal and mentions recycling and disposal facilities. So just wanted to let y'all know, make you all aware of that meeting going on. Like I said, it's mostly renewable energy components, but we've had several meetings with the staff of the Senate Natural Resource Committee, and sham recycling is getting brought up, responsible recycling, TCQ's process for authorizing recycling facilities and disposal facilities have been discussed. So while it's on the fringe, all those topics have been discussed and could get discussed during the hearing as well. So just want to let y'all be aware of that interim hearing going on.
I noticed, was it this week that there was a suit pressed against 2 sites in West Texas that
Yes.
we're storing.
Yes. Yeah, that's been an ongoing, yes, so the Attorney General filed suit, yes.
Has his hand up. I don't know if it's for attendance or a question.
Steve, do you have a question? Okay.
His mic is disabled and so his camera.
Any questions in chat? Okay, Steve, you should be able to unmute now.
I just want to confirm that I'm in attendance at the meeting. Thank you.
I have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the primary focus of the hearing then, you were saying renewable energy, so is this like from the solar farms and?
Yes, so that is, and focusing on how decommissioning happens at those facilities. But part of it, one sentence is about responsible recycling and disposal and responsible recycling disposal facilities. That is all I have unless there's questions.
Anybody have any questions?
So is that the only interim charge that has to deal with solid waste or recycling on either house?
Topic wise, we have one that is specific to HB 4413, an update on that one, but that was the renewable energy, not renewable energy. That one was specific to implementation of the House bill, which we've done rulemaking on and adopted, will be adopted here. It was adopted, it's effective like this week or next week.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Charlie, I know that Windblade facility in Sweetwater is getting a lot of news attention lately. Is that kind of one of the topics that committee is going to be discussing as well for Windblades?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, back to Anna for round 2. Second call.
Okay. 2 people. Seth Cunningham. And Scott Trevis.
Okay. So then the next item is MSW permit section update and turn it over to Megan.
So for staffing in MSW right now, we have 3 vacancies, an engineer, geologist, and a chemist. So we're working on getting those filled. The engineer position is currently posted and accepting applications. To tell your friends, better engineers to apply. For major applications, we have 15 permits under review and 5 registrations. So a little bit down compared to previous years, but we are using this time to take care of special projects and really focus on getting our reviews done in a timely fashion. So hopefully the applicants are seeing that quicker turnaround. I wanted to follow up from last time we talked about TCQ Send being the new platform to submit documents electronically to MSW permits. And the council members had a question on if the regional offices also use TCQ Send. And the long and short of it is it depends on the regional office. Some of them do have it, some of them don't. So when you need to submit documents to the regional office, contact them and ask their preferred method to receive electronic documents, and they'll guide you. Any questions on TCQ Send? All right. And for Trade Fair, we held Trade Fair, TCQ held Trade Fair May 19th and 20th in San Antonio this year. The attendance was really good. We got really good feedback. And I want to let everyone know that we do have the presentations online. It's a little tricky to search on TCQ's webpage. So we are going to share a link. It's shared in the chat, but this is what the presentation webpage looks like. And they're in alphabetical order. but there's search feature on the left, and then there's also the topics on the left as well. So you can filter by topic. So all of the presentations for this year are on this website. So you'll see like our regulatory guidance is on the bottom, even though it's an MSW. So it's not by category when you're scrolling through the blocks, but you can click on that, you can download the presentation and take a look. So if there's any that you missed, feel free to check out this website and pull them up.
I said, go back to the same one. I just have a quick question. I don't know if the region where our sites are uses it or not, but if they do, is it, so if there's something that's put in there, that's file share. Okay, so then somebody is routinely looking at a regional office, they'd be routinely checking also?
They should. Typically the way, at least in our area, the way it was set up was our proxy boxes are notified when we when something's submitted through TCQ send. So the regional offices will have some sort of notification process that they get an email when it's received.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So following trade fair every year, there's a Texas Environmental Excellence Awards. And this year there are 2 awards that we wanted to touch on that are related to waste. You can see here on the screen all of the winners of this year, but exciting to see there's 2 winners. One was Innovative Operations and Management's topic. And that was the Austin FC Q2 Stadium, so the soccer stadium here in Austin. And they have a really unique initiative as part of their Zero Waste Initiative, where they have a custom-made materials recovery facility on site that separates the recyclables, compostables, and waste generated at the stadium. So they're getting those different materials into the right streams. So you can find out more. These have links to the videos where you can learn more. And that was in partnership with Texas Disposal Systems, who also were recognized for the innovative recycling and landfill management technology. So you'll see Texas Disposal Systems Creekmore down there at the bottom. And they were recognized for their streamlined waste separation and material recovery, as well as their new renewable natural gas plant that's located at the landfill. So you can find out more about those by watching the videos. They're about 4 or so minutes long each. So feel free to check those out. It's cool to see the innovations in the waste management world, and also great to see it be recognized. Any questions on that one?
Just a comment. I believe the applications are being accepted for next year's awards right now, and I don't know when it closes, but I want to say it was like in August sometime, something like that. I may be wrong about the date, so don't hold me to that. But I think like as soon as the award ceremony occurred, like the next day, a notice went out that they were accepting applications for the next year.
Okay, great. Here we go. Thanks, Jeff.
The deadline is Friday, August 28th.
All right, and next up we have just a reminder that hurricane season started June 1st, and seems like this year's projected to be a little bit slower, but that can change. So, and even if it's not hurricane season, there's always potential for other natural disasters, tornadoes, fires, etc. So just want to remind everyone that we have the emergency temporary authorizations for municipal solid waste facilities. And this is the mechanism for facilities to request suspension of certain permit requirements during and after a disaster, so to try to recover and continue operations to the best of the ability. Those can be submitted directly. I know we've been pushing TCQ send, but those, because of the, we try to turn those around with approval within 24 hours. You can email those directly to us, and we will give the preliminary okay, and then follow up with a letter, typically like I said, within 24 hours. And then if you are in an area or have a disaster that requires a temporary debris management site, just a reminder that those you need to coordinate with a regional office and not with MSW permits. Questions on emergency temporary authorizations or temporary debris management sites? Last up, I wanted to cover a couple of emerging issues in Texas that MSW Permits is tracking. One is Ebola waste or category A waste. So TCQ has been in discussions with Texas Department of Health and State Health Services and with some other agencies as well, just to prepare if there is any Ebola waste that's generated, the best methods for treatment and disposal. And those conversations are ongoing. But just a reminder that while TCQ authorizes the disposal facilities, it's the Department of State Health Services that authorizes or determines the appropriate treatment and disposal methods. So that's why we're having those conversations now. But that is something that will provide updates if we have the situation that we need to address category A waste. And then also another emerging issue is the New World screw worm. That's been, some notices have been filed right now by the Texas Animal Health Commission. And at this time, TCQ recommends that you contact the Texas Animal Health Commission if you have livestock or other animals that are infected to talk about authorized disposal methods. And if the Health Commission approves disposal in a type 1 landfill, then reach out to TCQ and we will discuss disposing of the animal carcasses as special waste.
From a practical perspective, if a rancher shows up with a truckload of dead animals, how do we know? I mean, how do we even?
How would you know if they're infected or not?
What do we know? Because that's happened. Some places on a more regular basis than you care for.
Sure. That's a good question. From what I've seen, the Texas Animal Health Commission is proactively working with ranchers.
Good.
So that would be, I would think they were communicating on what the appropriate steps are.
Good.
That was all I had.
They're like obligated.
And that's why we wanted to take a step back on saying what the proper disposal methods are, even though we have access to the same guidance of it's Animal Health Commission's rules, guidance, decisions. So we wanted to take a step back on, we aren't answering questions on the proper disposal. We're saying go to Animal Health Commission. And then once that's determined, you can come to us and we can talk about disposal options. So we're making the person or the rancher make that call of you need to reach out to Animal Health Commission and then come talk to us afterwards.
And the Animal Health Commission does have a website or webpage completely dedicated to the New World screwworm, and they're providing updated notices, guidance, cases, counties with cases. So it's an active webpage. So that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So again, the next two are yours, so keep on going.
That's right.
Excellent.
Okay.
The MSWRRAC handbook.
Yes, so we submitted or sent a handbook out to the council members for comment, and the handbook is covering some basic information about the council as well as some practical, like day-to-day, how the meetings work, what the expectations are of the council, voting, and we had a deadline of getting comments, I believe today or maybe Tuesday. We have received comments from members, so thank you so much for your input. I noticed one comment is the name of the council. This one is in statute, so I don't know that we can get away with changing it, but we had some other good comments as well. So the question we have for the council members is this something that y'all want to adopt as a council, or is it something that you want to have available but not necessarily adopt, and we can get into, if revisions are made and they're minor revisions, that we don't need to go through the adoption process again. So just wanted to get y'all's input on how you would like this handbook to be incorporated into the council.
Yeah, I would think not having our approval would be my recommendation, just for reasons why you said, just so that you all have greater flexibility whenever you need to make changes to it, you're able to do so. Since it's a handbook and more of a guidance document not even really a guidance document, but just guidance information. That seems like that would be the appropriate way to go.
When I responded, I had said that I leaned toward yes toward adopting, but my concern was exactly what you said, that every time something changes, then we'll probably have a desire to formally adopt that. So I don't feel strongly one way or the other. And I guess if it's guidelines, then I'm fine with not, but for what others think also. I'm curious what others think.
Well, I think it's a great book. And it's something we should have thought of a long time ago. I don't know. We get new members come and go, and it's a great document to hand out and say, here you go. I'm with Jeff, whether you have a formal signed, sealed, or delivered, or whether I don't think there's anything controversial in it. It's pretty just kind of a statement of a collection of the facts. Mm-hmm. So I agree with on your shelf as a guidebook. I think that's what you call it, right? A guidebook, handbook.
Looks like Steve, did you want to go ahead?
I think that it's, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I think that the document will be helpful for us, and particularly for new members. But I would like to see, before we approve it one way or the other, that it reflect the comments and suggestions that you have received.
Yes, sorry about that. I should have clarified. We will address the comments and suggestions. We just weren't able to get to it before the meeting today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So we'll make revisions and then send out the revised one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll receive a copy of the revised version.
And if we adopt it, will we be adopting the revised version, or are you asking us today to adopt it, or the next meeting?
Since there's going to be revisions, it could be the next meeting, unless y'all are passionate and want to get a revised, or not a revised, sorry. It's not going to be revised today before this meeting's over. But yeah, it would be at the next meeting if y'all decide to adopt it with the revisions.
Okay. I guess my concern is, I think someone's already mentioned that just having annual or changes, and if it needs to come to the council every time there's a change, then how do you manage that, and what's a major change versus a minor change?
As an option could be, if there's no adoption, then I don't know what the cycle is. I'm just throwing it out every year, every other year, or something like that. There's just another set of eyes that's put on it. Everybody good, or if there's something that is worthy of modifying, then it just gets circulated around.
Yep. Any other members want to weigh in on the handbook?
I appreciated the opportunity to review it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Risa.
Tom had mentioned he did appreciate the handbook and that he felt the same. He didn't want to have to review it for small changes, so he was in favor of moving forward with adopting it.
Do we need to define small changes?
I think the question actually is it going to be adopted, or is it just done? So I think that's something we'll have to decide. At the very least, there's going to be another version that's going to be circulated, and perhaps at the October meeting, if there's not a strong consensus, now we can figure out, okay, we're going to adopt it or unless people, but what is the council thing? Like, are you leaning toward a formal adoption, which means we'd actually have an agenda item and we take a vote? Or is everybody, or is the preference that something similar to when we're good as a group with the revisions, we just say it's good? And then TCQ is the keeper of the document.
I'll add in real quick. When I was presented with this, our goal was to hand it to the council as your document. We created it, then it becomes your document. Again, there is some separation that this committee council is a nominated, appointed, and reports to commissioners. So executive director staff is a bit separated. We run it, but so my intent was to hand it to y'all. We can, I'm totally fine with not adopting it, but then it's more, a little bit more our document that we help y'all with. Then it becomes, if there are changes, we, for example, the comments, will make the decision on behalf of the council. So that's kind of the dichotomy between it. So either answer is fine, but it just becomes who's the ultimate decision maker on the document. My input on it.
Yeah, thinking back, this goes back a quarter century, back to my days as the communications coordinator for the Office of Waste here. You all have a preference? I'm just thinking in terms of, is there any type of additional administrative responsibility for you all one way versus another? Or is it pretty easy both ways?
This document is an easy document. It's a handbook. And again, going back, we have rules related to attendance and number of meetings we have to have. Maybe that's statute. But that's the extent of what executive director can do. So track attendance, make sure people show up. The rest of what's in the handbook is just right now, just our thoughts. So it becomes back to if somebody were to abuse something or voting rights and all of that, it becomes what can we point to? So we don't have a preference. We can facilitate either. It's just how much formality do you want placed on this to help maybe future situations. But again, this is a small, easy book.
Yeah, we also captured the decision that the council made a couple of years ago about proxies for elected officials. So that's something that if the council in 5 years decides we don't want to allow proxies for elected officials, that's something that might be considered a major change. That was a decision by the council. That's an example of what I would think of as a major change versus like a clerical change.
I'm leaning toward adoption and we review it. I don't think every year we need to review it, but maybe every 2 years.
We can also time the review when we have new members join the committee, which is every 2 years. Yeah.
See, Megan, you read my mind.
Anyone else the council have thoughts one way or the other?
I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of split it a little bit. Is that kind of adopt it, but give TCEQ the authority to make minor changes such as members of the committee and minor items like that. Because sometimes the members do change, mid-term, I guess, right?
Yes.
So
I think that makes good sense. And that was really what I was getting at when I said, should we define what a minor change is versus a major change?
That would be to define. Kind of lean toward it. It's one or the other. We either adopt it or we don't. Maybe the easiest is, I'm not trying to steal this up. This is just is we go the route of adoption and then it's just evaluated every couple of years and good with it. There's no changes. That's it. There's some changes, then they're made and then we adopt it again.
Maybe to go with what Jeff just said, if there is a specific reason that 2-year period make minor updates, then those could be considered, such as that example of a council member change.
I think you don't list the members in it, right?
Right. And the comment was that the president is listed
Yeah.
and is that going to have to be updated? And we can change it to where the president is part of the, go to this webpage where I list all the positions. So that was one of the recommendations that multiple members provided that we can change. So there's less need to have those administrative updates.
I think this will also be a good document for
We had not intended on posting it on a public webpage. But
even if just somebody's thinking about it, they want the document. Somebody submits an application, they hand that to them and say, hey, make sure you're aware of it. That's all.
Other thoughts? Where have we landed? I think we kind of swung both directions in the pendulum.
Jeff, do you want to restate what you said a minute ago?
I think it was adopt, and then we would adopt this document once the revisions are made and we're good with it. So that'd probably be at the October meeting, and then we would be on it. Maybe 2-year. Maybe that's the one to do. 2-year, although
As needed.
yes.
I hate to overthink this, given the fact that we've done 30-some years.
I know.
Okay. And it's just a nice document. Again, the rules of the obligation of the committee are stated
Yes.
in statute. It's just kind of it's just what it says. It's a handbook. So I wouldn't want to make it too burdensome. Maybe we just plan for the next meeting. We can do a show of hands. Who wants to vote for adoption and who wants to vote for just consistency?
It exists.
Right. Everybody can think about it for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
And you'll get the revised version sooner than that. Okay, well, that sounds like a plan. We'll make sure that's an agenda item for the next meeting.
You're up again. Anaerobic digestion.
Before you start on that, I see that Scott Trevis is on the line. So I did mark you as attending.
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a little while to get on.
Okay.
All right, well, next up, we're going to talk about anaerobic digestion rulemaking topics. So about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, I came to the council and said, hey, we're kicking this idea around of having anaerobic digesters at the notification tier. And so now we've spent that time since then looking into what makes sense for the notification tier for this type of facility. Just a reminder, anaerobic digester is, if you're not familiar, it's typically an enclosed vessel of some kind. There's different types of putrescible waste that's added, breaks down in a anaerobic environment, gas is produced, and it's usually captured and either sold or used in some way. There's also what's called digestate, which is a byproduct of the liquid and also the solids that may come out of the digester. And that can be used in different applications like potentially fertilizer, compost, different things like that. And then there's also a waste component that typically is disposed of. So that's just a quick recap of what an anaerobic digester is. And so when we're looking through what makes sense of the notification tier, we pulled from a couple different chapters in 30 text TAC. So this document that y'all, the members received is anaerobic digesters rulemaking topics. And what we're soliciting here is your input as council members on what do y'all think of these potential rule topics? Again, it's not rule language, it's our ideas with some justification of why we're heading in this direction. So just to quickly cover high level what we're looking at. One is the notification tier is really dependent on feedstocks. So this we're pulling from chapter 332, which is the composting rules that allows these same feedstocks to be composted under a notification tier for composting. And so it's source separated. That's really important that it's not mixed municipal solid waste, because at that point it's going to be a registration tier. But then it's these meat, fish, dead animal carcasses, oils, greases, dairy materials. Anyway, the list continues, a few more. So the feedstocks is one of the critical components that we identified of matching for the notification tier in chapter 330. We provide a little more explanation there. Also a facility description. This is pretty basic. We'll have an application form after the rules are adopted, and when people actually apply, that will have more specifics on what to include in a facility description, but that would just be something, again, we're proposing is you're going to have to tell us about your facility. And then borrowing from chapter 328, which is where our recycling rules are under the notification tier, is the recycling and marketability demonstration. So this is required for the NOI facilities that are accepting and recycling source separated non-putrescible waste. So this is your cardboard, your glass, your construction demolition waste. And so as part of the notification under chapter 328, the applicants have to provide the recycling and marketability demonstration. Similar here, you're producing gas, you're producing digestate, any other byproducts. What's your plan to do? What is your plan for those materials that you are recovering? We also intend to have a general statement about other TCQ authorizations that may be required, such as stormwater permits, air permits, water quality permits. If someone wants to have a land application for the digestate, then they need to go get the TLAP permit. So that's a general statement there. And then we're also looking at closure cost estimates and financial assurance. This is something that's also required for both the chapter 328 recycling facilities and the chapter 332 composting facilities. So we intend to mirror that financial assurance process, which is combustible materials stored outdoors. And then we also have rules for closure. Basically that if a site closes, all materials will be removed from the facility, and then following the making sure everything's closed properly. So again, that follows chapter 328 and 332. One that is unique for the proposed anaerobic digesters is the time limit for storing materials. Because these are putrescible wastes primarily that are going to be accepted, they have the potential to produce odors, attract vectors. And so we proposed here a maximum storage time of 72 hours. That's before it goes into the digester. So kind of like a holding area, but the max time would be 72 hours. There's also other things that we considered, like containers, that kind of thing. Like how else can we prevent nuisance odors and attracting vectors? And then similar to chapter 332, the composting rules, we're looking at a setback requirement for these facilities that would be 50 feet from all property boundaries to the edge of the operational areas. So that aligns with the notification tier for the composting rules. And then as part of this, we're looking at adding definitions so everyone knows what we're talking about, and everyone agrees on what these terms mean. So anaerobic digestion facility, anaerobic digester, and digestate. Those are three new ones that we propose. And then also pulling terms from 328 and 332 into 330, because actually in incidental amounts of non-recyclable is defined in chapter 328. But what's really interesting is dairy material, grease, and oils defined in chapter 332. And because these would be accepted at the facilities under chapter 330, we wanted to pull those definitions into 330. So it would be new to 330, but not new definitions to the TAC. And that's just to make sure, again, that when someone says they're bringing grease into their anaerobic digester, that everyone understands it's grease as defined by chapter 330.3. And then lastly, for proposed topics, we're looking at some exemptions. And I don't know if exemptions is the right word here, but for anaerobic digesters located at a concentrated animal feeding operations that only receive manure from on-site, those have been approved under the CAFO program. So we would continue that where it's not an MSW authorization. And then also looking at, because these digesters can range from being at small machines basically located in a hotel or a hospital or different areas like that, to large scale facilities that are multi-million dollars, that if it is a source separated materials generated on site, such as a small hotel or commercial facilities, that they would not have to obtain a certification. And that's it for the rule proposals, the topics. And then we also just covered a couple things on the application form where we would ask for more detail. And that's looking at tramp materials, which is the materials that are not going to be recycled but aren't necessarily considered waste. They're like part of the, like if you're receiving food from an industrial source like a factory and it's going to be in some sort of packaging, that would be considered a tramp material and not necessarily waste. So looking at how tramp materials would be managed. And then also on the application, providing more odor management, vector control, and a requirement to have a pre-opening inspection, which is what we require now for recycling facilities and compost facilities at the node. So I just wanted to run through those topics, but we can, of course, accept comments. And also we'd like written comments if possible from the council by July 23rd, I believe was the date, just so we can keep this moving. But we can have a discussion on these topics now. Lisa has a Hey, go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, I'm sorry to have to ask this. I probably should already know this, but I'm a little concerned about the digestate and what happens to the digestate. In particular, let's say you've got an AD facility and the digestate is processed, let's say composted, for example, on the same site as the AD facility. Is that a separate authorization? Are the composting rules incorporated into the AD rules because it's authorized as an AD facility? What's the thinking about that situation? Because I think that's a, relatively likely scenario eventually.
Yeah, that's a good question. So far, we haven't had any conversations about an AD facility being located at a composting facility. The composting rules do have in-vessel composting as an option, and it's followed with the aerobic composting process as a requirement. That's a good question and something we can look into more on how we would, if it would be two separate authorizations or would it be approved under 332?
It kind of goes both directions. One direction, what if you've got an AD facility at a composting facility? And the other direction is, what if you've got a digestate composting component of an AD facility?
Gotcha.
you envisioning any requirements for storage outside versus storage under cover, control of any rainwater? The range of materials is pretty wide, some of which, clean wood material and yard trimmings, and the composting yards, you don't have a lot of requirements on those, but other things, meat, fish oils, there could be a lot of things moving.
Sure.
And 72 hours that's a good time that parallels transfer station rules. But I'm just wondering if does it have to be managed on a tipping floor, a prepared floor?
Right. We had not considered that. As far as we talked a little bit about containerized, it's similar to transfer station rules for containerizing food and other digestible waste. We did not put it in this, but that's something we can consider.
The applications you've had so far, what have they proposed for their storage?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. I don't know that I have a strong feeling one way or the other. I just feel like you need to think it a little bit. Also on the volumes, are you going to require, or should we require, sorry, let me change the word, should we require tracking of inflow material tougher because you're digesting things now, so the volumes are changing. But for other types of notice recycling operations, this is how we get into sham recycling situations where we don't monitor inflow versus outflow. I don't know how you do that here, but I do feel like you need to have at least some kind of pulse that you're not just bringing things in. And you do have a 72-hour rule, so that helps. But maybe that takes care of it. But what about the material that comes in that doesn't go into the digester?
Yeah, that gets into the trait material and something we would have on the form as far as committing to disposal of something cannot be, because some things may be able to be recycled. But the non-putrescible aspects, the plastics, et cetera.
I remember how these systems work, but I'm kind of putting myself in a thought. If I was proposing one, a couple of things that run into my mind. Clean wood material and paper, you allow to store on ground all over the place for almost indefinite periods of time. Okay. But now we're going to tell them they got 72 hours to do it. The other materials like the hard putrescible meat, fish, dead carcasses, maybe 72 hours too long, but they should go. So I don't have a good. I'm not giving you a suggestion. I'm sitting here just thinking about where are the holes or where are the missing pieces.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what was just said. If you're going to anaerobically digest, let's say meat, 72 hours is too long, But I also have another question that sort of follows on to my previous comment, which is, okay, you've got anaerobic digestion, you've got digestate. Let's say you're going to manage the digestate on the anaerobic digestion site, let's say with composting, for example. Now you're going to have to bring in a bulking agent, let's say mulch, ground wood, or wood to be ground, whatever, that's going to be processed. That's a different storage and handling requirement, and absolutely, in my mind, shouldn't be held to a 72-hour situation. So it gets really blurry in that scenario that I'm envisioning.
Helpful insight.
One of the comments I had brought up, I don't know the answer to this at all, but I'm not clear the throughput of these. So my question was that I had asked was like, if somebody put a depackager on site as part of that, does that put it into a different tier or not? I don't know if there's enough material coming through that would even be something they contemplate or not. But just something to perhaps think about. I don't know if like a packager would be, if maybe you have to be at least registered. I don't know if that's the case. I just something that came.
Okay, can you describe the depackager?
Oh, it's like a mechanical. So like in the example of dairy, let's say it's yogurt. So it you put it into the machine and it gets macerated, and the plastic fines get separated out, and then the yogurt in that case could be digested.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that was the volume wasn't something we had considered, which is similar to the other notification tiers in chapter 328 and 332. So that was, we're trying to kind of follow those as guides, but definitely appreciate the input and good questions to ask.
And building on what Chuck was saying earlier about the material types, it's the example of paper being allowed to be stored outside, which definitely makes sense when it's, say, clean, baled cardboard or other paper types. But I would think if it's a AP facility, it's probably going to be soil paper. So then that probably makes it difficult to define different types of paper, large clean versus soil paper, and how you need to address that.
Well, feel free, like I said, to submit your comments to us in the next couple of weeks, and we'll look at what y'all propose or any questions that you presented, and spend some time looking at that more.
Is there an opportunity for entities, speaking specifically about Texwana, if they would want to offer any comments, or is it being focused for now just on the advisory council?
We've talked about sending it to Texwana.
Okay. We just have our.
The same with the Texas Composting Council.
Okay.
Megan, I had just one other item on the closure cost estimate, financial assurance. It's limited to facilities that store combustible material, which I understand that. But why wouldn't you just expand it and say you got to have some kind of cost estimates and financial assurance for closure of any facility?
That's, again, trying to match what's in chapter 328 and 332 for the notification tiers.
I see.
And that's why we're coming to y'all for input on what we can and should and do.
Understand.
So for much further down the road, next steps, the thought would be, so you've solicited input, and then you'll proceed with developing proposed rules and going through that formal process.
Right. Yes, and when we, probably before we even get to that stage, we'll come back to the council and give y'all updates, and throughout the rulemaking process, we'll give y'all updates as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, next is Santos. Hello.
Before Santos starts, I know that Mark had some time constraints.
Oh, we're okay.
A bit behind. Is he okay to wait until Santos is?
Or does he want to go? He was scheduled for 11.
Scheduled for 11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If he's on right now.
Mark, if you're ready.
I am ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let me share my screen.
So this presentation came about from, as a result of some comments that were made at the last meeting. And Richard had reached out to Mark about providing a presentation on rechargeable batteries and EPR. And then coincidentally, when we were looking for potential topics of discussion, Chuck had brought up also batteries in general causing fires and such. So we thought this was a timely matter to bring up. So we'll turn it over to Mark. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Can everyone see my screen and me? That's not sure. I'm not sure because I'm on the laptop.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. Well, first off, thank you for inviting me, and appreciate the flexibility. I'm actually in Switzerland right now, and I'll discuss why I'm here when I get to a slide that talks about it. It's not overly pertinent, but I'll explain it real quickly when I talk about PRBA. So what I'll do is I'll just briefly do a quick introduction of who PRBA is, just so you know who we are, and then I'll go right into the update on the US EPR and what we do in that space. Now I just got to get the slides to advance. There we go. So real quick snapshot. PRBA we used to be known as the Portable Rechargeable Battery Association, but with the onset of electric vehicles and e-bikes back in the late 2000s, we rebranded, but we kept the acronym to just the Rechargeable Battery Association. So officially, you might see us as PRBA, the Rechargeable Battery Association. We have about, it ebbs and flows. We run anywhere from 80 to 100 members. We've had a few over 100 at times and even below 70 at times, but it seems to average out in the 80 member area. Traditionally, we were a trade association representing the manufacturers of rechargeable batteries. But in recent years, we've actually become more of an association that represents stakeholders around the battery industry. So obviously, we still have the manufacturers, but we have manufacturers of users of the battery products, whether they be automobiles, electronics, energy storage systems, etc. So we have a fairly diverse group of members, but the common interest is batteries and the use of batteries or the manufacturing. We also have added in the last 5 or 6 years a number of battery recyclers. Obviously, as extended producer responsibility is catching on in the US for batteries, there are a lot of batteries coming in that need to be recycled. And because we work so closely in the area, in multiple areas that the recyclers are interested in, we have a handful of the major recycling members in North America as members of PRBA. We also have some test labs, some general consultants, airlines, and even some retail establishments are members of ours. We don't get involved in absolutely everything, but some days it seems like we do. But our sweet spot of where we deal in around batteries deals with regulatory, legislative, and transportation issues. And then as a subset of those, it gets into things like safety and fire codes and things like that. So I have them listed separately here because we do have individual committees that deal with them. But generally speaking, it's legislative, regulatory, and transportation, and then what comes out of that. I mentioned I am in Switzerland right now. I'm actually attending PRBA as a member. We don't get a vote because we are not a competent authority like the U.S. Department of Transportation, but we are accredited to participate in the UN meetings on the transport of dangerous goods. And that group meets every 6 months, usually in Geneva, Switzerland, which is where I am now. We also get involved in the different modes of transportation. So the UN covers essentially all modes of transport, but then there are other bodies that are international bodies that deal with airline transportation and vessel or the large shipping boats transportation. So ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the IMO is the International Maritime Organization. And what they tend to do is they adopt what the UN does, and then they tailor those dangerous goods regulations for their mode of transportation. So within PRBA, because we have a diverse group of members that have interests in different topics, we actually have a few more committees than this, but these are our active committees right now. We have a battery recycler committee, obviously dealing with everything that's interesting for battery recyclers. Environmental and recycling, which is I like to call the regulatory committee. So once something gets adopted in legislation and is covered in our legislative committee, if something goes to rulemaking after a law is passed, that is something we deal with in our environmental and recycling committee. We also have an active fire code committee. We have a committee that deals with OSHA requirements, workplace safety. And then, of course, we have a transportation committee that deals with, in our case, lithium batteries and sodium ion batteries are considered dangerous goods. So the transportation focuses on that. The top issues that we, and these vary from time to time, but they've been fairly consistent over the last couple of years. Product stewardship is big, and you'll see in a couple slides here just how big it has become. And the transportation has always been an important item for us. But transportation becomes even more important then, because historically it was looking at the transport of, think of the new products. So products coming from the manufacturer and then going ultimately through the supply chain to the end user. But with extended producer responsibility, we're seeing that those products have to be transported back to a recycler. And there still can be residual energy in those, so those are regulated as well, whether they're new or at end of life or someplace in between. Battery safety is a top issue for us that covers a lot of different areas. Obviously, transportation safety is a big one, but we also get involved in a lot of the e-mobility, like the e-bikes and scooter safety and the charging issues. And then also another one that many may not know about necessarily is ingestion safety, particularly with the lithium component batteries that are the size of a nickel or maybe even a little bit smaller. These are the things that go into like your key fobs and wearable devices, and they can cause problems if ingested. They can cause some pretty severe injuries. So it is something that we focus on very, very closely. Universal waste. So we work very closely with the EPA. The EPA is always looking at modifying their universal waste rule because it does cover some batteries now, and likely lithium-ion batteries will be added to that in the near future. I mentioned the fire codes is a big one. Black mass is when you grind up a battery, and after you refine it and get rid of the plastic and the metal components, what you're left with is the active materials of the battery, and it gets ground up and it essentially looks like black table salt. Because there's now a lot of this material moving around the world, there's a lot of focus on being able to make sure that material is properly classified, because it still can have some residual issues with it, whether it be corrosivity or toxicity or even flammability. So there's some work going on at multiple levels, both domestic and international, about transporting black mass. And then, of course, we get involved with battery-related chemicals and everyone's favorite, more recent topic of the tariffs. So we get heavily involved in that too. So I have this subdivided. I have this map here shows the battery, the entire landscape across the U.S. market right now for all types of batteries. I'll briefly cover this, and then I'll subdivide it by what we call portable batteries and the electric vehicle batteries. So a portable battery means something you can put in your pocket or you can carry it by hand. So it's a fancy way of saying it's like a coin cell, a AA, a D cell, all the way up to like an e-bike battery. You can't put an e-bike battery in your pocket, but you can still physically carry it. We call those portable batteries, and because they're so consumer focused, they get bucketed into the same area because of how the consumers interact with them. When you get to the larger format batteries, like electric vehicle batteries or energy storage, the consumers typically do not interact with them, other than in the case of like an electric vehicle where they may ride on top of the battery because it's in the car. But the consumer never physically interacts with the battery, especially during disposal. So they're separated out because they are different animals to some extent. So this is a snapshot of all the efforts. And I'm going to zoom in on, I'll start with the portable initiatives. So again, these are the batteries that you can put in your pocket up to e-bikes. The red states represent the states that have already passed a law. Now, most of these states have not implemented the law yet because they've passed within the last couple of years, and there's a period of time where everything has to get set up. A couple of these states like Washington, Illinois, Vermont, and the District of Columbia are now operating. The District of Columbia is the oldest program that's been operating for a couple of years now. A fair number of the other states like Maine, Oregon, Nebraska, Colorado, they've just passed their laws within the last year or so. So they're about a year away from implementing their programs. So with those red states, it is now, I'm going to count Kentucky as part of that, and I'll explain that one in a second. There are now 12 states plus the District of Columbia that have an all battery EPR program for portable batteries. When I say all battery, that means non-rechargeable batteries, rechargeable batteries of all sizes up to about the size of what we call a medium format battery, which is an e-bike battery. Kentucky is just a little bit different. They passed a law this year that is encouraging voluntary collection through the law that they passed. It's a strange way of doing it, but they did pass it this year. The states that are in orange are states that either have or had a bill that was active this year. Those that have an X through them mean they had a bill, but the bill did not pass for a million different reasons. We still have a couple states that are still active that go year round. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and California are still active. California actually is a weird one because it does have a small battery law in place already, but they are adding the medium format. So think of the e-bike batteries. So that's why California is a red and orange state at the same time. And then we have a handful of other states that we've been watching closely because they've hinted that they may be doing something this year, or sorry, not this year, but next year. And I can tell you just based on the last 48 hours that like Utah and Ohio will be orange states next year. They already have something drafted. So a fair number of states. Where we are now with the red states is about 30% of the U.S. population will be under mandatory EPR for portable batteries within the next 12 to 18 months. And then on the electric vehicle batteries, I'll stop real quick there saying there are other large format batteries like energy storage systems. There are starting to be discussions on those, but they haven't gotten to a point of any type of legislation yet. But there has been discussions on electric vehicle batteries. We have 2 states now that have laws implemented in New Jersey and Connecticut. California is active right now. Massachusetts was up until a few days ago. And the light green states either have expressed an interest or they have had bills in previous years. So the EV batteries are a little bit behind the portables, but are starting to catch up in some ways. So with that, PRBA maintains 2 different model bills right now. We have had a small and portable, or small, medium, or portable version for a few years now. We learn as we go, and we're constantly revising that model bill. We are on version 3 right now, and I'm working on a version 4. They aren't major changes to the model bill. It's just, again, these are little tweaks as we learn things in states, and we're always updating it. So that one has been active since about 2022. We also do now have a electric vehicle battery model bill. It's about 99% done. We're just literally just going through an editorial review on commas and punctuation and things like that. That should be ready to go within the next couple of weeks. And we have had discussion on large format, but that so far hasn't gone anywhere. And I just include the chart here. These weights, it can be a little bit confusing. What we've done with the weights of these batteries is that it very closely coincides with the international regulations on the movement of or transportation of these batteries, because the transportation and the EPR regulations somewhat dovetail together at times. So we've tried to make sure that we've harmonized as much as possible. But this is what we mean when you look at these, what small, medium, and large format means and the different types. So with the small and medium format bill, there are key components. You know, it's a 14-page document. I tried to boil it down here into the key components. The big one being state oversight. It does require plans and annual reports and approval by the state. The small and medium format batteries do require a stewardship organization or organizations. There can be more than one. Some states prefer one, other states leave it open. We also have in there something that we call limited antitrust protection. It's very limited to just when those that are setting up the program, which tend to be competitors, are developing a program. You know, when you have a bunch of competitors sitting in a room developing something that has a cost component to it, it just causes some concern for antitrust regulations. So it is just limited to establishing and running a program. We do carve out recalled batteries. It's not that these batteries can't or should not be recycled. They can and should, but it just pushes that responsibility on the recalling manufacturer instead of spreading a recall out over the hundreds of different stewards that may be running that program. We also have in there a right of private action that if a state is not enforcing the law against free riders, it gives an approved stewardship organization the ability, after the state has where it has not done something after a certain period of time, that an approved stewardship organization can pursue free riders for civil damages. We also have some carve-outs for small batteries because some of the marking that needs to go on the batteries is larger than the small battery. We have provisions about where materials have to go to avoid sham recycling. There are some provisions on what retailers do and do not have to do, just to clarify that. So, you know, we want to work with our retail partners. So we have obligations in there, and in some cases we have lack of obligations. There are some exemptions, you know, like prescribed devices, embedded batteries, at least at this particular time, are carved out until we figure out exactly what to do with that. Because you get into some embedded battery devices that use textiles, rubbers, nicotine, cannabis, things like that, that just are, it's something we're working through. It's going to be coming in the next couple of years, but for now, the embedded batteries are carved out. And we carve out automotive batteries just because they have such a unique infrastructure and those products are already being recycled through them. We have provisions for independent collection to a limited amount. And then, of course, education and training is a big component of the model bill. On the EV battery side, it's a little bit different. One of the big differences is that we don't require a stewardship organization. You can use one, but we don't specify that you have to. And the biggest reason is because in the portable space, you will have hundreds of different producers, whereas in the auto space, you'll have anywhere from 5 to a dozen. So they don't necessarily need that extra level. They can if they want, but at least at this time, they're choosing not to. And then when you get into the EV batteries, there are sometimes second, even third lives of those batteries. So there are provisions in that model bill about what, like, secondary handlers or scrap yards, remanufacturers, repurposers, what their requirements are as part of it. And of course, labeling is a key component. As I mentioned, the differences in the collection scheme, just the biggest one is the need for a stewardship organization. It's just, and I talked about what mainly those reasons are. Just it's a different model as far as how consumers interact with the batteries. And I hopefully didn't go too far over my time, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions for Mark? Go ahead.
If you don't mind, just Mark, thank you for the presentation. It is, when you're talking to states about having producer responsibility bills, do you ever come up with the topic of the amount of fires that are created by the batteries at solid waste facilities and recycling facilities?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, when you look at the states that have already passed something, there are a couple of different reasons why a state may pursue EPR. One can be for strictly environmental issues, but more and more we're seeing states like, no one ever thought like the state of Nebraska, for example, would have passed something. But they were seeing fires in their municipal waste, and they wanted to do something about it. So it is, it's essentially the main reason why a state looks at doing something right now. The fires in the solid waste area. Obviously, these programs are set up so that these batteries end up in a controlled environment through collection. Will it stop every single fire? No, but it'll put a significant dent in it.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I ran across a statement from the president of the National Solid Waste and Recycling Association. They conducted a study. I can't speak to the viability of the study, but they estimate that there are 5,000 battery-related fires at recycle centers and solid waste facilities every year. And then virtually there is a fire almost every single day in almost every single state. I know in my company's own case, we've seen the incidences of fires at recycle centers skyrocket in the last 4, 5, 6 years. And sadly, we've recently had a $32 million loss out in Arizona where a facility was taken to the ground because of electrical battery that went white hot. It's not just a normal fire. When those batteries go, they can soar to temperatures of 2,000 degrees, apparently, just in a matter of minutes. And the facility in Arizona was equipped with sprinklers, 4 special foam retardant spray devices, specifically targeted, and was responded to by the fire department in less than 15 minutes. And they were unable to control the fire because of the heat and uncontrollable nature of the battery fire. So I was stunned by that information and sharing it with the council members. I don't know if y'all have seen or heard, but this is becoming a really, really big thing. Not that we know exactly how we're going to enforce it, but we just recently put out an all-out ban in my company for throwing away batteries in the trash or the recycle bins. I don't know how we monitor that, but it's a big deal. This is a big deal.
Hey, Mark, this is Rich. How are you?
Good, Rich. How you doing?
Chuck, by the way, the previous speaker works for Waste Management.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. Who are some of the allied organizations that that you all work with?
So the usual suspects in the states are obviously us, the National Waste and Recycling Association, NWRA, SWANA, the Consumer Technology Association. I'm completely blanking on a Product Stewardship Institute out of Massachusetts. There are a number of the California Product Stewardship Council. We work with the US EPA, various state EPAs. So there's a lot of interest in this area, not just at the individual state level, but even at the national level.
Just one follow-up question. Last year, Texas had a bill. And did you guys interact with the legislator and the legislative committee?
I did, yes. I actually submitted numerous comments and had multiple phone calls. So yes, the challenge with that bill at the time was a little tongue in cheek, but we call it a ban without a plan. Some states look at it and say, well, we're just going to basically say you can't throw these in solid waste, but then if you don't have a collection program, where do you put them? So it's backwards in some ways. You have to have a program in place, or at the same time, some of the states that have passed, and we actually have it in our model bill, that you pass the EPR program and it comes with a solid waste ban as part of it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And thanks for talking to us from Switzerland.
No worries. It's hot and sunny here. It may rival Texas temperatures here. It's 95 degrees here right now.
Is there a lot of interest in the soccer? Because Switzerland made it to the team, round of 16, didn't they?
Yes, the game ended at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they were honking horns until probably 4 a.m.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next, now, Sam.
Hello, everybody. Just a couple of things. One thing, and I know Megan talked about some openings that they had in the MSW section. So the BPS section, we're the support section for the two permitting sections. And we can go a while without having any kind of turnover. Since our meeting in April, we've had 5 openings that we're dealing with. Most of them promotions within the section or within the agency. So that's always a good thing, because that means we're hiring good quality people. But again, just the process of hiring and filling. But luckily, we've been able to maintain our document processing, those packets that go to chief clerk's office for notice. And so we've been able to maintain that. Also, all the other support programs but just wanted to let everybody know that we're also in that spot dealing with staffing. So a couple of things. The Swiffer. So Swiffer phase 1, we got about $470,000. We awarded 5 grant projects, and those are kind of coming to an end. We did extend it for 1 more year for those original 5, just so that they could complete everything, get the paperwork in. So they'll be going on for another year or so. Most of them, their projects and activities have been completed. Funding has been spent. We do have one cog that's still in the process of completing their project. So they'll move into that next year as well, and hopefully get it complete here in 27. We did apply for $580,000 additional for phase 2. That application has been submitted to EPA. They're processing it, reviewing it. We're looking to hear sometime in August, September. Of course, their fiscal year runs October to September. About approval, and if we do, then the funding will be available sometime in October. So, but we have submitted an application. What we're looking at is again extending it to 5 cogs, trying to get 5 new players in, so they have an opportunity to also provide some new projects, again, projects that can be replicated throughout the state, and so we're looking at that. But again, we're in the planning phase. Should we get the approval, which we feel pretty comfortable that we will. And so it'll be an additional about 480,000, a little bit more than that. We're looking at, again, to look at 4 or 5 different cogs for those projects. The vacancies in the committee. So I think at the last meeting in April, we had kind of thought about the idea of going ahead and publishing notice that we have these 4 openings. There's one that's and so we came back, looked at the 4 openings, and they're very distinct in that one is for COG folks only. And the 3 others are for, again, elected officials with very specific populations in either municipality or county. And we felt that that publishing notice statewide might cause a little bit more confusion. So we've systematically kind of approached it, and that we talked to the COGS. We've been working with the COGS at getting a representative from one of the COGS on that. We also sent out information to the COGS related to their members, and seeing if we could get, someone from one of the municipal or local government with the population numbers. So we're continuing to work on that. We did get one application. We're trying to get more information from the individual to see if they do meet any of the openings. We know they don't meet the COG one, but possibly the elected official one. They are an elected official, just don't know truly what position, what city or county, so we can't determine the population rate. So hopefully that one may work out. If not, we'll keep going, right? Trying to get those 4 of the positions filled. The annual tire report. So again, in April, we mentioned that the 2024 calendar year 2024 report had been made available. The way that our annual reporting works, it's a calendar year, so January to December, and the previous year report. So the previous year report is due on May 2nd, May 1st of that following year. And so we're always working a year behind. And so in this case, it ran a little bit longer because we did go back and do some more data analysis, really following that transporter number. And the way it is, transporters will report that they picked up tires from XYZ and they sent them to this processor, who again may have sent them to another processor, and then they ended up at the final place. And so each of those folks report to us where, what tires they collected and where they collected them from, where they sent them. And so our analysis was to follow that first report from the transporter and make sure that it didn't get counted again in different places. And so if you look at the 2024 report, you're going to see a description of that. You're also going to see where we had to go back and adjust our numbers. And we did analysis to make sure that anything 3 years back followed the same trend, and it did. We also looked at the percentages, numbers that we had that were going to TDF, were going to processors, and that also followed the trend throughout the 3 years. So we think we don't think, I think our data shows that the numbers that we're now providing are a little bit more accurate and a little bit more consistent throughout the years. And so you'll see that, for example, in 2022 number, it was about 54.1 million tires throughout the state that were managed, and that one moved to 41.7. And of course, in 2024, we're at 39.77. So again, we went back and we looked at all that data, and it's consistently on the trend. So I think that gives us a little bit more indication without double counting some of the buildings. So that's one key part of that study. The good thing is that we've been able to maintain our numbers related to how many tires get landed. And we're trying to knock it down, and we're staying in the 80s, 80% that gets diverted away from landfilling and onto TDF, onto chrome rubber, and onto the other different types of uses of tires. So that's really all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Questions? It's quick on the agenda. There was also a bullet of compost rebate program.
Compost rebate, yes. There's no action on the compost rebate. We've kind of had other things that came up. We're still looking at it as we can, but right now we haven't really moved forward, and we kind of put that on.
I had a couple of, a quick question about the end uses.
Okay.
Things are, relatively flat with the noticeable
Right.
differences in processing has gone from 2022, 394,000 tires to 2024, 2.5 million tires. What is processing?
Processing is pretty general in that processing can be someone who cuts them up, but then sends them over to someone who makes pellets out of them. And so that number, as we kept looking and kept doing analysis, there's two things that can happen. That processor can either have those tires in place that they've just cut up, but still don't know where they're going to go, or they're also tires that they cut up and have sent off. But in most cases, that processor with that high number is going to be the first folks that cut up those tires, and maybe not the final product. Once you have your crumb rubber people, there's a lot of crumb rubber people that do everything, and what we found is there's a lot of crumb rubber folks that actually get pieces and then make their product.
That makes sense. The other thing is beneficial use has gone up almost 10 times in the same time period. Is this beneficial use of whole tires? I mean, I would consider crumb rubber and tire derived fuel and all those things beneficial use.
Right. Yeah.
But this is
so we have one of the things that we deal with are folks that reach out to us and say they're going to use scrap tires for certain things. Like they're going to cut out the sidewalls and they're going to use that as a base for something, or they're going to be using them for retaining walls, or those kind of things. And we typically look at those, and there are some requirements, like you got to have them anchored, you got to control them. Once they're not used for that purpose, you got to landfill them now. And so we've always had a difficulty in categorizing those kind of projects. There's a lot of projects out there that are like that. And so this time we wanted to really keep a good record of them. And so by keeping a good record, we have to report. And so that's where that number came from.
Okay. Well, we had a company come and present here not so long ago about using it for road-based support, I believe, over rocks. I was just wondering, was that driven by one or two companies that have gone haywire?
There's companies in there, and then there's individuals that come up with these ideas and plans and provide those to us.
And then I'm sorry, I promised my last question. The crumb rubber has dropped tremendously from 11 million tires to 7 million tires. Is someone just gone out of business, or is it what's happened there?
On those, there were a lot of folks that had been doing crumb rubber that either reported less numbers, or we didn't get reports from them. We followed up, and they weren't able to report if they reported at all by our deadline. So that is still something that we'll continue to look at, and we can get more information back to you.
So that number may not have dropped that tremendously. You may just not have reported. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. Thanks, Senator. All righty. Last category, approval of the minutes. So from April 9th. So that was circulated in hard copy here, circulated in the email. And look for a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay. Motion from Director Dillard and Scott Pasternak. Seconded. Okay. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Action items and Q&A.
Start with Q&A. If you're on the phone, if you press star, I think it's 5. Yes, star 5 to raise your hand. No. If you're on Teams, go ahead and raise your hand if you have any comments. We don't have any. And I only have one action item, if that's to put the new MSWRRAC handbook on the next agenda.
Okay, great.
You're gonna send us a link also or something.
Trio stuff. Trio. Oh, trio. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, our next meeting is October 8th.
Hey, one question.
Go ahead, Rich.
Did we ask Mark for a copy of his presentation? And do we want to share that with the council?
Yeah, I can send an email.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. I thought of it when he
Thanks.
was presenting and it left mine.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we are adjourned. Have a great rest of the summer.